So ELAC may have performed one of the smartest maneuvers that I've seen from a high-end audio company in quite some time. And that's because a few years ago, they took this engineer who was rising to rock star status and they plucked him and his buddy out of Pioneer and they brought them onto their own team. And since then, everything's been history. I'm talking about, of course, the one and only Andrew Jones, and combined with ELAC's efforts and ELAC's resources, they've been able to just put together some amazing products for the money. Just about everyone raves about them, which is why I'm excited to talk about the flagship of the debut line, the F6 towers. So I'm excited to tell you guys what they're all about and whether or not the hype is real. So with that said, let's get right to it. Alright guys, so here they are, the ELAC F6 towers. Now I'm not going to waste too much time dissecting them or going over their specifications just because that information is already available online. So if you want to know things like what the speaker's efficiency is and all that good stuff, then just click on the description box down below and I'll have a link that'll send you directly to the manufacturer's website. Still, I do want to give you at least a profile rundown of what these speakers bring to the table. So let's start by talking about the 1-inch soft dome tweeter. Now this tweeter is housed in a conical horn, otherwise known as a waveguide, and this does a few things for you. Number one, disperses the sound very evenly and very uniquely, I should say. Number two, it's going to up the efficiency of the tweeter just a little bit, and it'll also extend the range of the tweeter just a little bit so it can better integrate with the woofers. Now these are going to be 6.5-inch woofers. Everything was designed from the ground up by Andrew Jones, and the unique thing about these woofers is that they're actually wired together in series, so everything behaves essentially as one force, which is really cool because this really gives you this coherent presentation that the ELACs have become pretty known for. Now on the back of the speaker, we're going to have 3 ports, which is kind of unique. We have a set of 5-way binding posts, which are nice. And then on the bottom here, we're going to have some unique feet that I think are pretty awesome just because it's a small detail that a lot of manufacturers don't pay attention to, but it's much better to couple something like this to like a set of spikes or whatever than to just have it on the floor. So it's the small little details that really go a long way in giving you good performance. Anyways, that's going to be a snapshot take on the F6s. Now let's talk about how they sound. Alright guys, so I readily admit that the ELAC F6 towers may be some of the best all-around speakers I've heard at this price point. Now before I go into that, I first want to tell you all what you guys can expect if you were to bring them home and to plug them into your system. So number one, you can expect a presentation that's definitely in the warm side of neutral. And number two, you can expect to hear a slightly laid-back sound. And to get into more specifics, let's start with the top end. So interestingly enough, the top end actually starts to drop off at 15 kilohertz, which is a really good thing at the end of the day, just because when it comes to a speaker like this, most people aren't going to be plugging in $4,000 or $5,000 turntables or CD players or DACs into them. Usually it's going to be a computer, you're going to stream from your phone, it's going to be like a $200, $300 CD player. So you don't really want a speaker that's tilted up on top. So it's good that the speaker rolls off at 15 kilohertz, but there is a compromise. The compromise is that because it's in essentially a miniature horn, it's going to have a more direct sound. And what this means is if you have a recording that sounds rough, don't expect the speaker to make it sound buttery smooth. It's still going to sound rough, but it's going to sound more listenable. It's not going to be so bright and hashy that it's going to send you out of the room, unless of course you just have a really horrible room. So with that being said, the top end is actually very nice. I wouldn't say it's the airiest top end on the planet Earth, but it does have a nice, easygoing presentation to it, and I think most people would actually enjoy it. Below that, we have the mid-range, and the mid-range may be the star of the show. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of BBC speaker, but if you go and research BBC speakers, you'll know that they're famous for their mid-range performance because, in particular, they make vocals sound so natural. And I got to say, the ELAC F6s actually have an almost BBC-like mid-range. Vocals on these things are just to die for, man. They are wonderful for the money. I think the only time I've ever heard better vocals at this price point would be from the Magnapan MMGs. So the mid-range on this is just fantastic. It may be a little bit overly thick, maybe just a little on the warm side of neutral, but I think at this price point that's fine. I'd rather have it to be a little thick sounding than too thin sounding. So overall the mid-range is fantastic. It retrieves detail very effortlessly, and it has an unusually natural sound for the money. And then we have the bass, and the bass is going to be pretty good, very tight, very clean, very accurate. Now there's going to be a compromise here, and what it is this. When you're designing something to a budget, you have to make a compromise. And with Andrew, he put a lot of money into the drivers. He put a lot of the budget into of course, the ports and the binding post. But the one area that he had to sacrifice in, it wasn't the crossover, it was actually the cabinets. So he couldn't make these thick cabinets and brace them as well as he wanted to just because there was no budget left for that. So what that means is, well, when the bass hits hard, you can hear the cabinet. Now, it's not port chuffing, it's just the sound of the cabinet. So the good news is, if you're listening on axis, in other words, you're just sitting right in the middle and you have both speakers pointed at you, it's a non-issue. You really can't detect it that much. But if you're listening off axis, then yeah, you'll hear the cabinet going. And again, that's just a result of trying to build something really good for the money. You have to give up something somewhere. That's where ELAC had to make their compromise. So otherwise, though, the dynamic range on the speaker is going to be fantastic. It can hit hard when needs be. The imaging is going to be interesting. It's not going to give you this wall of sound. Instead, it's going to be more point sourcey, which means when you point the speakers at you, you're going to get this lock solid imaging. I mean, everything's just going to unfold right in front of you, but you're still not going to get that wall-to-wall imaging out of these speakers. Otherwise, they're fantastic. They don't really require much in terms of room or positioning. They can work in small rooms. They also have enough ability to move enough air to work in big rooms. They work well with just about every genre of music I could try, from rock to metal to classical to jazz to electronic. And it's really wonderful because this is a speaker that you don't have to make too many excuses for. And honestly, I really wish at times that I could have started off my journey with something like this, because I probably would have saved a lot of money, at least at the beginning of it. And that actually leads me to my final thoughts. So at the beginning of this video, I asked a very simple question, and that is, well, is the hype real with the F6 towers? And the real answer is, it's just a matter of perspective. For example, if you're somebody who's read all these rave reviews and you expect a pair of $760 towers to sound like a $2,000 or $3,000 pair of towers, yeah, you're going to be in for some disappointment. But if your expectations are a little bit more realistic and you just say, hey, what's the best speaker that I can get for the money that checks off all these boxes, then I would say the F6 towers are going to be really tough to beat because they're just so diverse. There's so much that they can do. There's so much that they're good at, that I would say that these speakers just fit a wide range of applications that would make most people very, very happy. And the biggest compliment I can give to them is this. If I started out my journey with a pair of F6s and a decent integrated amp and source, you know what? I will go so far as to say I probably would have been done for a while. I don't know if it would be a year or two, but I know it would probably be quite some time until I start getting curious about better sound, just because they hit on so many of the tenets that make for a great listening experience. So I think it's a job well done by ELAC, and I look forward to what they come out with here in the future. Meanwhile, guys, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.